This is servicing the three-way in a CS3 Mech Frame. The first thing you'll need to do is remove your Mech Frame from your CS3. That's already been done here. We're going to just remove the rear grips now, which will give us access to the three-way. So this bit here is the three-way. We want to make sure we don't lose that gasket on the top there. We just push the brass pin out, place that to one side. Now the three-way will slide out. We have a gasket on the bottom. Sometimes this gasket stays inside the frame, sometimes it comes out with the three-way, as in this case, and then we have the gasket from the top. So we can just take out both of those while we do the servicing and place the frame to one side. Have two different parts of the three-way. You have QEV section at the back here, and you have the main spool section at the front here. We'll quickly do the QEV at the back. So just pull out using your fingernails the QEV back cap, and we have a diaphragm inside there. May just want to very gently use a pick at the end of a small hex key. Just take out the diaphragm and just give that a clean. We can just check that there's no tears or cuts in any of the surfaces. That looks absolutely fine. We can also clean cap as well. Then we can take a very small amount of grease. These hardly need anything at all. Literally just wetting the surfaces here. Just clean the diaphragm off with a bit of grease, just wet the surfacing. And then the easiest way to reassemble this is to get the diaphragm, goes point your nose forward. You can just balance that or stick it on the end with a little bit of grease. And then we just slide that back in as one single assembly. Slide that all back inside there like that. That's the servicing of the diaphragm section. Now we go to the front end. We have two retaining screws here. These shouldn't be too tight at all. They do have some like a, not thread locker, but just anti-vibration patches on those. We'll take off the cap, place that to one side, and we can pull out the spool guide and cap there, and we'll see that the spool has come out with it as well. What you have here is the spool, cap, the center section here. Then we just have one more O-ring inside here. Again, you will need a small hex key or a pick, and just pull that out. Then what we want to do here is, again, just like the diaphragm, just want to give these parts a bit of a wipe over. We do have another O-ring inside here. You can just remove that as well. Just lift it out of place. And give that a wipe and the spool wipe. Get all that old grease off, any debris that might have got in there through the system. So that is now all clean. Just using a small amount of grease on each of these. I find it best to actually grease up the O-rings out of the assembly and then pop them back in. So just give them a light coating and then just pop them back into place. That one going there. And what we're going to do is we'll take the spool. Again, we'll just put a small amount of grease. It's just on the thin sections of the spool we're looking to grease here, not this large actuation end. We'll just give that a light coating of grease. And that goes in to the large end of there. We'll just push that down and through. Then we can build up the assembly on that now. So center section here goes with the large face up against the large piece there, the smaller end facing to the end of the spool. Lastly, we have the last O-ring there. that coating there. Make sure we've got some in and around that O-ring, and we can just slide that on to the end of the spool there. Any remaining grease on your fingers, just work that around the O-ring on the outside. That's just static O-ring, so we don't need lots of grease on that. I suppose before we reassemble it, we'll just clean all the old grease from out of inside three-way body, and then your assembly here can slide back all in one. It just leaves us the cap to go back on. Very important how you put the cap back on. Its orientation doesn't matter, it will go either way round, but it's very important how you fasten up the two screws. This is one of the most common areas of issue with the three-way here. This cap here is used to clamp all of the components together inside the three-way body. What we don't want to do is fasten up one side, and then that might make the cap and the spool and all the parts kink over to one side. So we don't want to fasten up one side tight on its own first and then have the whole thing kinked over. So what we need to do is try and maintain a very even gap along here between the body and the cap here. So all we're going to do is we're going to slowly tighten these up 1/8 of a turn at a time until you feel resistance on both of those. I'm literally using my fingertips to tighten here. I'm not cranking these down in any way. And then what we want to do is, before we put the whole thing back together into the frame, is we just want to check that this gap is even along here. If you can see some daylight through the gap, like I can here, that's absolutely fine, but it should be a nice even gap. It shouldn't be tilted in any way. Okay, so once that's all back together, we can take the two gaskets, the big round or oval one goes in the bottom, funny shaped one with two holes goes in the top, just clip those back into place. We can drop those back into frame, put the pin back in. Oops, silly me, put it back in the wrong side. Pin goes back in there from the right hand side. And that is servicing of the three-way in the CS3 Mech Frame.